we're going to go ahead and get started with our first demo where we're going to build a GPU accelerated IoT Edge module within Azure DevOps from a registered agent running on a Jetson Nano device. We're going to deploy that onto the higher end Jetson Xavier module. So what this is going to look like, I'm going to go ahead and head into my Azure DevOps portal. And here we've gone ahead and brought in a project known as the Intelligent Edge Hands-On Lab. Now this is a project that's available on GitHub, and what it's going to allow you to do is build out a fully self-contained GPU accelerated module. And what I mean by that is that this module is going to contain all of the CUDA dependencies within it. So this is going to make the image a little bit larger, and we're going to go into a lot more details during the final portion of our presentation when we talk about Ian Davis's Jetson containers, which will show you how you can build your own custom self-contained modules. Now, if you're wanting to follow along with this particular project, it is available on GitHub, so you can pull it down and follow it on your own. We will have links to that resource at the end of this particular demo. So the first thing that we're going to go ahead and look at is how we got our Jetson Nano device registered as an active agent with our Jetson DevOps project. So you'll see here I've got a number of different agent pools. And if I click into here on my Jetson Nano, this is the device that we installed the Azure DevOps pipeline on prior to. And if you look here, you can see it's ran a number of jobs. And if we actually click onto here, you can see that it's currently online and in an idle status, meaning that it's awaiting us to go ahead and enter in a job that it can then build on top of that device. So let's go ahead and start by looking at our pipeline. Here I've got one for the Intelligent Edge Hands-On Lab project that when we click into it, you'll see it's actually a CI build. So every time that we change code and upload it into our Azure DevOps repository, this build is kicked off. And we store this in a YAML file. So this is actually a build as code type of approach. And the important thing to note here is that we're using this Azure IoT Edge v2 task. And this is what's going to allow us to accomplish a number of different functionalities by being able to both build out our modules and push them into an Azure Container Registry. And if we want to go even further, we can do things like being able to perhaps create a manifest or a deployment template that we can push into an IoT hub for distribution down to our devices. So let's go ahead and take a look at another pipeline that we have. This is our release pipeline, and this one we've done a different approach here. We've actually gone in and used the visual editor for this particular release pipeline. And so when I click into this, we can go ahead and see what comprises this particular setup. If I select tasks, you'll see there's the Azure IoT Edge v2 task, this time used within our visual editor. And the first step that I'm doing as part of this release is I'm going to build my module images. So what this is going to do, it's going to look at our deployment template.json file. And I'll go ahead and bring that up real quick so you can understand what this looks like. This essentially gives a specification of all the modules that we want to end up running on our device. And if you click through here, you'll notice that we see the system modules for the Edge agent that we discussed earlier, as well as the Edge hub. And this is in addition to a custom module that we've defined called the YOLO module. And this is going to run YOLO object detection to be able to pick up more than 80 different unique objects using an attached camera on a Jetson Xavier device. And so you can see here that when we go down to the host configuration, we're mounting a number of devices into here. And this will make a little more sense as we get into Ian Davis's portion of the presentation, but this essentially allows us to be able to have access to the GPU hardware on our device without any need for any additional Docker runtime. So we could run this on Moby, we could run this on stock Docker, and we would still have access to the underlying GPU hardware. So let's head back to our release pipeline, and let's take a look at the next step, where we're going to push the built module images that we created in the previous step. And the way that I have this configured currently is to push to a generic container registry. And what I'm using specifically here is Docker Hub itself. So we're actually going to push a public image out to toolbox/YOLO module that will be pulled down as part of the eventual specification when we create our deployment. Now the next two steps are going to perform that specific task. So you'll see here we have a generate deployment manifest task. And what this does, it looks at that deployment.template.json, and it's actually going to convert this into an official deployment. So this is going to actually fill in some of the areas that were noted with variables and give you a fully fleshed out deployment specification for your IoT Edge devices. And finally, the last step that we're going to do is select the deploy to IoT Edge devices step. And this is going to allow us to create a deployment that we can then publish into our IoT hub for our devices to be able to pull down and deploy down to the device itself. So now that we have that set up, we should be able to just go back over to our release, and we can actually click on Create Release. And we're going to go ahead and select the latest code change, and I'm going to go ahead and fire that off. What this is going to look like, if I hop into my Azure subscription, we're going to go ahead and jump into the associated IoT hub for this particular deployment. And you can see here that we've got a number of messages that have been sent from the device throughout the day, as it's already been configured with a previous deployment. If we click here on IoT Edge, there's a section here where we can see all deployments that have been sent out to our device. So if I click here, you'll see here's the Jasmine DevOps deployment that's coming from our Azure DevOps instance. And you can see that it's telling us right now that it's already targeted one device and it's applied. And when we look at the target condition, this mentions that it's looking for a device where tags.deviceType equals AGX Xavier. And that's the metadata that we were talking about earlier that allows us to target particular devices wherever they may be. If we click into this a little bit deeper, we can start to see what modules are specified in that deployment. And this again matches that deployment template.json that we were looking at earlier. You can see here the Edge Hub, the Edge Agent, and the YOLO module are specified. So let's go ahead and click back on our device, and we're going to go ahead and look at the particular device in question that's about to receive this deployment. So I know ahead of time that that's going to be this Jasmine Xavier device. So let's click into it. The good news is it looks like the IoT Edge runtime response is giving a 200 OK, which means that all of our modules are successfully running, and we can verify that right here. You'll see the Edge Agent, the Edge Hub, as well as the YOLO module. And if we click on deployments, we can see that the active deployment for this device is the Jasmine DevOps deployment that we just created in our release pipeline. One other interesting thing to note here is if I select Device Twin, you can see here exactly where I specified that metadata tag that allows the device to receive that deployment given the specified target criteria. So here you'll see we've got a tag for device type equal to AGX Xavier. And with that said, that should give us all that we need to be able to verify that our device is receiving the appropriate deployment. So I've shelled into that device, and you can see here that the YOLO module is up and running, as well as the Edge Agent and the Edge Hub. And we can verify that by clicking into a web server, which is going to show us those results. And there you have it. We have object detection running with YOLO, pointing at our crowd of attendees for this particular presentation. Some interesting things to note. This is in fact the Jasmine Xavier device that is running the code, and this is the Jasmine Nano device over here on the left side that actually built the code that was deployed into IoT Hub and targeted down to that device. Some cool things to see here as well is this is a great object detection algorithm. It's not picking up our non-humanoid action figures here, and you can see that everyone else in the picture is getting detected just as we would expect. Now, just to verify that we are in fact using GPU acceleration, I'm running JTOP through an SSH session with that Jasmine Xavier device. And you can see here that our GPU is constantly getting pushed up here to almost full utilization as it runs that object detection algorithm that's been deployed down as a containerized module to our device. So this is a really cool way, as you've seen here, to be able to take a device that goes into the field and maybe using a device that has the same host OS to be able to build those module images without any issues of having any problems when you actually go down for the final deployment. Now, one final thing to note here. Because we've got this data flowing into Azure, it makes it very easy for us to then take that and use additional services that might allow us to operate on data coming through that IoT Hub. For example, what I've got here is time series insights, which is going to allow us to look at our data in a fashion that allows us to see it over time. So if I click into my time series insights instance, you'll see a number of events that have popped out here. I'm going to go ahead and filter these by people, as that's what we've been seeing the most of. And you can see there's a high increase, and we're detecting approximately 12 unique individuals over time and recent. And we can even do some cool things like look at a heat map, and you can see when I properly set up these figures to be able to be detected in the demo. So if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about everything that you've seen in this particular demo, you can head to aka.ms/JasmineDevOps, And that will give you a number of different resources that will allow you to reproduce everything that you've seen here, as well as going into additional details to teach you about all of the pieces that were involved in making this particular demo.